Hello, welcome aboard.
Hello.
You're on the air.
Oh, okay.
Hi, so I'm going to ask you both to introduce yourselves, and then I would be very excited about talking a little bit about Mystcon, because now that I've become aware of it, I've been checking it out, of course, preparatory to tonight's show, and I'm kind of falling in love with it.
Oh, nice.
Oh, we're so glad you love it.
That's awesome.
It actually has a funny history with the name, Mystcon, but let's introduce ourselves first.
Yeah, so my name is Brendan, and as you mentioned, one of the things you work on is Mystcon, and I don't know what else to say. I've never been on the radio before. I've never done anything live. I'm excited and nervous. So that's my intro.
Well, I'm Claudia. And the funny thing about Mystcon is it used to be called Historical Conspiracy. And we actually had to get rid of, shrink that name because YouTube started really not liking the word conspiracies. So we went to #Mystcon. So now you can find us on #Mystcon on YouTube.
Yeah, and that's why all the old episodes, they still say Historical Conspiracies.
Yeah.
You know, that's something I would actually, as I told you, you can treat this show just like it's a phone call. You are both there with your cellies, and I'm in an actual recording, yeah, that too. I'm in an actual radio studio with a board in front of me with some very antiquated equipment and a couple of computer screens, and it looks like professional radio in here, but
Nice.
Not from over here, so it's a little bit less scary.
Yeah. From here, we just have the phone here, so it's very easy for us.
You're right. It's very non-threatening. I feel a little bit better.
So I didn't have prepared questions, but you mentioned, and I'm not surprised by this, that YouTube doesn't like the word conspiracy, and that brings me to something that I've been paying attention to for a long time now. My interest in conspiracies goes back to the 1960s. I was never satisfied with the official explanations of either Kennedy assassination and Martin Luther King, and I was very affected by those assassinations because I'm from that generation. I know where I was when Jack Kennedy was shot. I know where I was when Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy were shot. I was a little traumatized by these things because there was a lot of violence that was shown quite graphically in real time on television, and I was not a child of the 60s. I was a child in the 60s.
Yeah, the JFK assassination is such a huge event with so many conspiracies behind it. It's hard to cover in one episode. That was one of the episodes that we were going to work on, to do a multiple episode in-depth thing into the JFK assassination, from the Umbrella Man to the Babushka Lady, everything that happened with how he was arrested. Was he under mind control? There's some conspiracies going down that route. So it's a lot. It's a lot of conspiracies. The mob is involved. It's a giant, even a Mandela effect around it. I don't know if you've ever heard of Mandela effects, but there's supposedly a Mandela effect around the JFK car.
Actually, let's jump in there, because I did a couple of shows with my usual crew that includes Cynthia and Dawn, and we did a couple of shows on the Mandela effect. I don't know the Mandela effect Jack Kennedy one, so why don't you tell me that one?
Okay, so the Mandela effect when it comes to the JFK assassination is that some people remember that the car sat only 4 people. It was not a 6-seater car. There's some versions that people only remember there's only 4 people in it. Some people remember there were 6 people sitting in there. So half the population is split between those two different versions of reality.
I think I remember 4, counting the chauffeur and then in the back would have been Mr. and Mrs. Kennedy, of course, and Mr. and Mrs. John Connolly, which would have made 4 in the back, and 1 in front driving would have made 5.
Right. Some people think the car itself was only a 4-seater car.
No, it was definitely a full-size Lincoln. There's no question about that.
So the Mandela effect comes to who remembers what and where were they influenced. I think this one is about being influenced by media. The way some angled pictures were taken, you could see only 4 people. So the people who didn't actually witness the event thought it was a 4-seater type of a car, not a 6-seater, not like a regular, Lincoln. So that's where I think some of these Mandela effects come from. There's some Mandela effects that completely trip me out and I believe in, and then some Mandela effects that I believe could be completely explained by other stuff. So I don't know. I'm in between. I'm a little confused by the whole Mandela effect thing. I don't know what.
I've never seen more than I always thought there'd be 4. If you had asked me, I would have said 4.
It's 6, yeah.
And we've had some interesting Mandela effects involved with some of the projects we work on too, where people swear up and down that I had such and such a card in a game, and from day one that card never existed, and people are convinced that they thought it. It's kind of interesting.
He developed card games, so his friend Derek and I are convinced. You cannot tell us otherwise that there was a specific card in one of his Zombie Fails games that had antlers that were shaped a certain way with a certain color. We could both describe them. Describe this card like we could see it in front of us. And when we both saw this card when we were playing the game one day, we were like, this is not the card. When did you change the card? And Brian was like, I never changed this card. I don't know what you're talking about. So we're convinced that he's lying.
No, to be fair, I did go back and look at all old copies and all cards that I never released or stuff that, they were maybe this is, but I didn't use them. But yeah, no, there was no other image for that card. I remember that.
That's a personal Mandela effect. That's a little bit of a creepy one, too, because I'm convinced he's trying to, I don't know.
There are so many of these Mandela effect things I can explain away, and then I hit one where I went online and I kept seeing Smokey Bear when I know perfectly well it's always been Smokey the Bear.
Do you remember if he had suspenders?
He certainly did.
He never had suspenders, Chelsea. Welcome to the Mandela effect. He never had suspenders. And most people remember a pair of red suspenders, but he never had suspenders. That's the other Mandela effect. And that's when you sit there and you're going, you got to be lying to me because I could see the image in my head. My personal Mandela effect was Chick-fil-A. That is where I started down this rabbit hole of Mandela effects because I was driving down the road and I was looking at this Chick-fil-A sign and I'm going, that's brilliant marketing. I'm in marketing. So I'm like, that's brilliant marketing. They spelled it wrong, so it's very obvious, it'll catch your eye. That's great. Chick is spelled, what I had seen it back then was C-H-I-C. So I'm like, that's great because it'll catch your eye and, that's brilliant. And come to find out, it was never, ever spelled like that. It was always C-H-I-C-K. And I was just sitting there with my mouth open going like, no, there's somebody lying to me. This makes no sense.
Could that be as simple as a K falling off a sign?
No, it actually has never, ever been that at all.
Well, did other people...
And I found out there was I found out there was a bunch of people that were like, no, this is exactly how it was spelled. And then when I had Googled it and I had done a lot of research on it because it was driving me insane, it was never the logo. That logo never existed. The one that I saw very, very clearly as I'm driving down the road multiple times had never existed. It blew my mind. I just don't understand. And there's some other Mandela effects that could be explained, like the end of that song, "We Are the Champions." You know that song?
Yeah, it ends with the words of "We are the champions of the world."
No, it doesn't. I'm sorry, Chelsea. No, that's a good one. No, it does not end with that. But most people believe that that's what it ends with. But I'll explain that one.
Okay.
So the reason is because if you've ever watched any concert that they have done, they never listen to it after your show. They never end it with "of the world." But there's some radio stations who cut sections of it out, and they ended it with "of the world." So some people started thinking that's how it's supposed to end. But actually, the true song never ended like that. But everybody, there's a very good chunk of the population that will bet money that's how it ends, including you, apparently, which is great. No, it does not end like that. Now, if you're a Star Trek fan, the "Beam Me Up, Scotty," that was phrase that was never said.
He always said two to beam up or one to beam up.
But it's easily because, they wanted a catchphrase and there was some parodies of it. So maybe that's where they caught that Mandela. Like that's where that could have spread. Luke, "I am your father" was never said in that series, that famous series. That phrase was never said. And even the actor himself is caught on interviews saying, when I said the words, "Luke, I am your father," and he'd actually never used those words in the script. So people are like, well, the actual actor said he said those words, and now the actual movie that's playing doesn't say that at all.
See, with George Lucas,
yeah,
I'm not even going to try because Lucas keeps changing those movies all the time anyway.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
I mean, I don't know why. I mean, when J.J. Abrams did the first of the new batch of Star Wars movies, Lucas said, "I was going to do one," and it's like, woulda, coulda, shoulda. We waited 30 years and you didn't. Instead, you kept redoing and tinkering with everything that you had already done.
Do you know a lot about those movies?
Way too much. I mean, one of my favorite things about Harrison Ford is that Harrison Ford himself wears a T-shirt that says "Han shot first."
Can you describe C-3PO?
I know I'm going to get something wrong or something weird.
Go ahead. It is a trick question. It is a trick question.
I know he got the red. I don't remember when he got the red arm, but I think it was in one of the prequels.
Yeah, that's not his original. I'm talking about the original C-3PO that was in the big major, the three ones that were the big major.
All right. What did I miss?
He always had a silver leg. So his entire body was gold except his leg that was silver. Unless I have that backwards, his entire body was,
No, you got it right.
Yes.
Yeah.
But a lot of people believe, a very big portion of people believe, that he never had that silver leg. That's another Mandela effect. And I'm not talking about like 5 or 10 people. I'm talking about like a very good chunk of the population could swear up and down and have, companies have made figurines of C-3PO all in one solid color.
Again, with Lucas.
You better go back and change it.
Yeah, I mean, Lucas
the Mandela.
keeps recutting and re-editing and recutting and re-editing and tinkering with so I wouldn't even play that. I mean, there are Mandela effect things that the Smokey the Bear one really bothers me because
It's Smokey Bear, Chelsea. It's not Smokey the Bear.
Oh, man.
That one got me, too. I remember Smokey the Bear. You can't tell me it was Smokey Bear.
Yeah, I'm not going to... Yeah, I can't be convinced of that, and I am convinced that at least some of the time in the 1960s he had braces or suspenders.
Yeah. No, apparently he never had them. ever, which is just makes no sense.
I didn't know that this topic was going to come up, the Mandela effect. But earlier today, the topic had come up, it was actually from a Mystcon episode, and it introduced the concept that had me rethinking about it, that the Mandela effect, it could be, so if we have multiple dimensions all split off in all these different branches, but if they're all collapsing back together, for example, or there were hiccups, so people were bouncing from one dimension to another where something is slightly different, but for so many people to agree on these collaboratively on these things, it would mean large numbers of people are collapsing from dimension to dimension. And I don't know, it was just a random thought, like perhaps all dimensions are
Holy
collapsing.
crimson
together.
sky of death. Are you saying we're doing the DC Crisis of Infinite Earths for real?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know what that is. But, it's actually a plausible theory because they started, I can't remember the name, and I'm sorry. They started doing a lot of experimentation with wormhole generators.
The CERN Super Collider was the way I heard it.
There you go, that one, CERN. That's what I was thinking about.
I've been watching sliders lately.
So the CERN, they were doing some CERN Super Collider stuff, and apparently that's what people are stemming it back to. Like maybe there's some collapsing universes, maybe they open some kind of a...
Oh, I didn't know other people thought this. I thought this, I was thinking about this earlier. I didn't know it was a thing that other people thought.
Well, not the way that you thought of it, like it's collapsing.
If things are collapsing. Well, there was an episode with Geiger and one of the sliders episodes, and he was trying to, collapse all dimensions together instead of having them all separate. And so he would, merge every copy of each person together. And, so that was there's a lot of cool sliders. But conceptually, yeah, I mean, maybe, it made me think of the Mayan calendar, and people thought the end of the world. And maybe the world actually did already end. We're just stuck in this quantum collapse. And that's why it seems like things are kind of weird.
As frightening as that thought is, that's the one I find the most credible.
Me too. Yes, me too.
We're collapsing.
Yeah, we're collapsing into one. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
And that's why you would have Smokey the Bear and Smokey Bear, but there's only room for one to be observed. So some of them are getting bumped out as the things are collapsing together. Alternate histories, alternate futures, everything would be smushed together. It'd be pretty
Well,
neat.
Today, it could have been anything that triggered this, but today, there was a thing on Facebook I happened to see. I use Facebook mainly for business purposes for my work, but if you're doing promotions of any kind, it's a go-to.
Yeah, right.
I'm an entertainer. I use it to look for work, things like that. But I just happened to see this thing where with the reopening restaurants, but doing the social distancing things, at least some places had the idea of putting store mannequins.
Yes, I saw this.
You saw that too, right?
I saw this, yes.
What is it?
I guess they thought it would be more encouraging to have customers come in if they made the place look more comfortable, but they didn't want anybody sitting next to each other because of social distancing. So I guess it looks like they're putting in mannequins so you don't feel lonely while you're sitting alone.
And if you saw that picture, which obviously you did, that picture was creepy as anything.
I'm sorry, that sounds like a bad episode of The Twilight Zone. No.
Actually, I think that might have been...
That's horrible.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't like that. No.
I do like it, but I'm a goth. It's so creepy. I mean, really, really creepy.
Okay, Chelsea, I don't know, I would probably finish, I'm freaking out thinking about it. I don't do mannequins. I don't like dolls. I'm not a very big doll person. So that to me sounds like...
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you, did you, you haven't seen every Mystcon, did you ever do a haunted doll one?
Oh,
yes.
Well, I did the top 10 creepiest dolls sold on eBay, or the top 10 most expensive dolls on eBay. Yeah, we did. I did a doll one.
And I was not involved. I didn't even do the research. It scared me. No.
I basically looked all over eBay to see what were the craziest, sold dolls.
I mean, the movie The Boy, the first one, I was all right. It was, an interesting horror movie, but I watched so many horror movies they'd have no effect on me. I got nightmares from the second one.
The doll that I was most interested in and that freaks me out is Annabelle.
Oh, yeah.
Which was a fascinating story by itself because it bounced around for a while.
Yeah.
And eventually was pulling in, like, a lot of money for people wanting to buy that thing.
Yeah, and there's no way I would ever want to own it. I'm sure you would be like, yes, not me. No. Annabelle fascinates me. Tommy, I believe, was another doll. I want to say Tommy. He was the inspiration for, what is that? Chucky. The movie Chucky. He was the inspiration. It was a doll that was very, very old, and it had a lot of depth behind it, and it inspired the movies that Chucky was doing.
Those Chucky movies were funny to me.
Thank you. Child's Play, that's what I was thinking. Go ahead.
To me, the Chucky movies, Child's Play, are slapstick comedy.
Yeah, they did become old.
Yeah, I mean,
think the first one was medium, but then after that, they definitely...
I loved Bride of, but...
Like Nightmare on Elm Street, actually.
When you go back and you watch those older movies, the things that creep you out, they freak you out, are kind of humorous now. Like the way that people are like screaming bloody murder, and you're like, oh, come on. Like, I know you're a big fan of older, probably, movies like that, like the horror movie.
My favorite horror movies are the ones from the 1930s and 40s, quite honestly. But
Ooh.
Okay, 30s, but Nosferatu.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
That had to be 1930s.
See, I need to watch more 1930s.
Actually, Nosferatu was 1922, if I have the year correct.
I'm going to my brain any movies that I remember. The other one that I remember from that time was called Lost Horizon. And that was
1937.
Yeah, 1937.
Okay, I guess I have to get into my horror movies from the 1930s because
Lost Horizon was fascinating, and it also matched up with the alleged diary of General Byrd or something, who came back. They went to the Arctic on some expedition or whatever. They came back. He's got this diary allegedly that talks about how they found this empty space in the Arctic where these people lived, and they were like, hey, listen, you recently discovered nukes, you better knock it off. And there's a lot of weird stuff, but it paralleled this diary, and that's what I later found. So, yeah, the Lost Horizon and the diary of Admiral Byrd, I think it was Admiral Byrd.
I'll have to watch that.
They went looking for oil, but then a lot of people think they went up there looking for, like, escaped Nazis or something. Like they're like somebody was building something up there, and they were willing to go, interfere. Because to go look for oil, they brought a lot of military vessels, apparently, on this expedition, that if you were just looking for oil, you wouldn't need, like, all this, muscle.
Yeah.
But yeah, now I think the diary was later proved a fraud, and when I think his son submitted it. I don't remember all the details of this guy, but I don't think it was actually his diary, but maybe it was.
That was the inspiration, I think, for the first of the X-Files movies, the one in Latin and rather in Antarctica with the spaceship under the ice and the black oil and all that.
That whole story creeped me out because it felt oddly like it could be possibly true. I always feel like there are people making films or stories or whatever, and I feel like there are people trying to share info with us without actually, exposing true details. And I feel like wrapped up in the movies and shows, there's truth about the world.
Chris Carter was using real UFO lore.
Yeah.
The whole time.
Yeah.
The overall story arc of the X-Files is the prevailing theory about the Roswell crash and the aliens and the whole, there are variations all along, but they took the main thread that is believed by the most people who believe in the story of the Roswell crash and the aliens and...
Well, the Roswell crash happened on July 7th, 1947. And if you were to say something right now like a UFO crashed in 2020, and you announce it on Facebook like, hey, a UFO crash, we found some aliens, there was some, ship parts, people would be like, oh, that's great. Like, a lot of people would be like, oh, that's crazy, but a lot of people would be like, that's probably some fake news right there, and it's not going to make that big of an impact.
Let me scroll down to the next funny meme about cats eating rocks or something.
It's not going to, like, they're making it so mainstream, so now it's not, it's almost like 70 years later, but it seems like even when they were to come down and, like, have an announcement, it would have to be televised on every television for people to start actually panicking.
On the other hand, the Pentagon actually released those pictures of those Delta.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not that long ago.
And they admit that the pictures are genuine, that they were taken by pilots on a training mission, and that they have no idea what the bloody things are, and are inviting the public to tell them.
There was a big event that happened, like, I don't remember the time, so I'm not going to even guess, but I'm going to say in the 50s or 60s or somewhere in that area. Big event that happened where there was a UFO that lit up the sky, and we were actually shooting at it. And it's just washed in history.
I think this is one of our episodes.
It's like washed in history, like it wasn't a big deal, or it must have been, like, nobody's wondering, what was that thing? What were we shooting at? Thousands of people witnessed it.
Well,
and
I'm kind of visual, so I remember, as soon as you start talking about it, I remember what I visualized, these people, like, with weapons shooting at this thing, and then, kind of just...
There's an image out there of it, actually, like the actual thing, and people are just like, yeah, I guess. I don't know. Must have been a thing. I'm sure they'll tell us at some point.
Or like in 98 or 99, I forget the exact year, I knew last week when we did a segment on it, but 98 or 99, the New Jersey Turnpike was blocked for jammed up for miles because everybody on the New Jersey Turnpike saw this unidentified flying object.
See, that's crazy.
It was the headline story on the 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock, I guess it was 11 o'clock news that night. And it was never mentioned again.
Yep. How about that ring of fire that showed up by Disney World like this year? And everybody's just like, oh, yeah, that was some unidentified thing. I guess it must be a thing. All right, moving on. Next day, it was just gone.
I don't remember that one.
I have to send you that one on Facebook. It's just crazy. There's a visual ring. I haven't looked into it, admittedly, enough to be like, oh, it could have been some kind of but it looks ridiculous. It's scary. And just people were like, oh, yeah, that does look scary. Okay, so what's the next one? Let's find out the next story, I guess. There's just so many news. People are like...
Well, it's an oversaturation.
Yeah.
Anything that you get oversaturated with becomes normal.
You become numb.
Once it becomes... I'm not even trying to use the word numb as much as it just becomes your normal. And that's why humans are capable of all kinds of different levels of behavior because whatever they're saturated with becomes normal. And so if you're, like, oversaturated with something, then it's no longer impressive. You're looking for something else. And...
I don't know if you guys remember a TV show called Hogan's Heroes.
I know the name, but I can't remember.
I remember it being on. I remember never watching it. It wasn't like I was little. I was a kid.
Oh yeah, I grew up watching it, for better or worse. And there was a character played by the brilliant John Banner called Sergeant Schultz, and he would just keep saying, "I see nothing."
Oh, yes. Well, I definitely recognize that.
Yeah, that was like his tagline, "I see nothing."
Mm-hmm.
And...
apparently his way to say, like, I don't see anything, I don't... Yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah,
okay.
Because, like, he was too nice to turn Hogan and his crew in, but he didn't want to get in trouble and get sent to the Russian front, so he kept saying, "I see nothing." And, I mean, I'll be honest. I'll speak for myself. I see or learn about or notice things. I'm scared to death all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even like talking about UFOs, even though I've done several shows on it, because for the kind of shows that we do, it's mandatory. I'm fascinated, but I almost don't like even talking about it because it scares me, and I admit it. The whole thing scares the bejesus out of me.
Well, then don't look up our episode on atomic mishaps, because that would scare you.
5 times you almost, what was it?
5 times we almost died, yeah.
Oh, you mean like the one where we, B-52 accidentally dropped an atomic bomb in the Florida Everglades?
Yeah, that is in there, actually.
There is an actual story that we did. It was back in 2013. Do you want to tell the story?
Well, the only thing I remember is that I guess these guys fell asleep with the blast doors
open. Yeah.
And the pizza delivery guy just walks into the secure base, into the missile, like, these are the guys with their fingers on the trigger in case something goes wrong. And they left the doors open. These guys just wandered in, and it was kind of interesting. And it was if it was 30 minutes or if it was later than 30 minutes, then it was.
The guy needed to deliver the pizza, and he knew he needed to do it, so he just walked inside the secure base because the blast doors were open.
Yeah, it's like, oh man, you just could have fell asleep and leave the
blast doors
missiles available to whoever happens upon them. Oh man.
Yeah, the B-52 bomber you were talking about was in January 24th, 1961, and it was carrying 2 nukes that crashed into Goldsboro, North Carolina. One of them wasn't armed. However, there was a 75% ready to detonate the second one. But it didn't because there was a hardware malfunction. So, yay!
That is pretty great.
Yeah, that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
That was in 1961. That's the one that you were talking about, Chelsea.
I mean, so, and I don't, when was the Ring of Fire thing at Disney World? I don't remember that one.
Supposedly this year. It happened this year. I can try to pull it up. But it was, people had taken pictures next to Disney World with like this ring of fire, and all of a sudden the images just disappeared off the internet.
You know, I can believe anything this year. Anything. No, this year the wheels are off, man.
Try searching Ring of Fire UFO Disney or something and see if we could find it. There it is. It's that second picture right there. Ring-shaped UFO spotted over Disneyland. Yeah.
Are you sure that's it? This looks like maybe someone just made this.
It wasn't that one. It was that one, yeah. There's an actual video. It's a scary black ring UFO above Disneyland. It looks like a smoke ring that's kind of sitting still. I'll send it to you on Facebook.
And why in the world would it be Disney? Because Disney... Did you ever do any shows on Disney, both Walt Disney, the man, and...
I don't know. I have done so much research on Walt Disney, the man, and the private secret room that's in there, his ghost that appears sometimes at night in walking down in Disney World around that secret area. I think it was like room 13. I have to look it up.
I don't remember. I don't know the secret room story.
Yeah, there's a secret society that's inside there, and there's a secret room, and the lights go on randomly inside the room.
I know he was a big Mason.
Yeah, there's a story behind that too. Yeah, we did a huge about Masons. We did one of was it the Masons about the Denver airport?
Oh, right, where there's that whole secret part of the Denver airport.
There is such a huge story behind the Denver airport, from the murals that were painted to the horse outside that killed its creator. The the horse that's sitting outside with a big red eye, looking very threatening outside the Denver airport, that horse killed its creator by a piece of it falling on him. There's an underground base at the Denver airport that nobody's allowed to go to.
I've seen pictures of the underground base and stuff because Jesse Ventura's show Conspiracy Theory, he did one on that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, supposedly it was supposed to be for a new baggage claim system that's supposed to be more automated and people could travel better through it. And then at the last minute, they decided, we don't need this, so we're just going to bury it. Entire apartment building size structures that were built underneath it, they just decided to just abandon it, supposedly.
And then supposedly it was a place for certain elite groups of people to use as a survival bunker if the manure hits the windmill?
Well, there's a flag. Is that right? I'm pronouncing it wrong.
You like the way I cleaned that up, by the way?
There's what?
There's a family show. I hope you like the way I cleaned that up.
Yep.
Yeah, that was very good, yes. So there's a plaque right outside the Denver airport that says parts of it were donated by the New World Order of Denver or something. I'll have to look it up, but it's really interesting how it's with the actual Mason symbol and everything.
Oh, wait. On the Mason topic, we never made an episode about this, but do you remember? Well, and I'm going to share the story as well as you remember. We had noticed that there was a correlation between the dates of the original creation of the Bavarian Illuminati,
yeah,
and the sign and the 1776 Fourth of July signing of the Declaration.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I said, and so I'm looking at these dates, and they, it's like 2 or 3 weeks apart, 3 weeks maybe. So we spent a long time trying to do the math, like what kind of ships did they have? Could somebody have started the Bavarian Illuminati and sent an operative across the ocean to get involved with the development of the new country?
And we figured out that it was time.
Yeah,
it was a plausible theory.
At that time, if it was like 20 years earlier or something, no, but they had developed some new kind of ship that was slightly straighter, and it took them less time. And so, the end of that really long study in math was, yes, they could have made it from there over to here and been involved with the
signing.
Potentially. Been one of the founders.
The way we approach topics is kind of like if you can prove us wrong, we invite you to do so, because we really love the trying to figure out the facts behind the conspiracy.
Yeah. What I love is the motto of the Bavarian Illuminati, as you probably know, was Ewige Blumenkroft.
No, I did not know that.
That's German for flower power forever.
Oh, really? No,
Yep.
I did not know that. That's interesting. See, that's definitely, I want to go into that and do.
But yeah, I mean, then what do I know? I don't know anything. I often say to people, there's two kinds of information. There's your personal experience and then hearsay. So really, anything that I personally experienced, I'm not really, married to the idea. We did the math, and yes, it is possible that somebody could have got from there to there. I have no idea if that means anything, but I thought it was really neat.
Yeah, I did a lot of looking into the Roanoke, the missing Roanoke. Was it
Was that tribe?
Tribe? Yeah, no, it was a tribe. It was a group of people. It was they just completely disappeared, and that was fascinating to track through. And I want to do an episode on that as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know about that.
That one that's quite a story. We still don't know what happened there.
There's a lot of, I guess, conspiracies and theories and, there's a lot of things about the witch trials that people got completely wrong. It's just the way it spreads. That's why I want to narrow stuff down and figure it out. Because a lot of people think witches died by, the way they're depicted in cinema, which is burnt at the stake.
They were hanged except for one gentleman who was pressed to death.
Yeah, see, some people just don't, they don't even know where it started from. They don't even know what happened. They just assume what they've seen on TV is true, and it's actually not. It's not.
I like the air gotten their bread theory.
Yes. You know, there was a bunch of stuff. It all started with like a bunch of little girls that just wanted to do. Supposedly, they were going to get in trouble for something. I want to say I have to look into it again. But and then they started a rumor, and it just got worse, and then they just kept lying about it, and then it spread to this whole thing, and everybody just started, witch hunt.
Right, and we saw something similar happen in the 1980s with the Satanic Panic.
Yes. Yep.
Which was a load of bollocks.
Manson didn't help with that at all.
What?
Manson didn't help with that at all.
Oh, well, there's a whole story there, too.
Yeah.
For one thing, I have always said that if Manson hadn't existed, the Nixon administration would have had to invent him.
Oh, I'd love to hear all about that.
Well, start very simple. Before Manson, hippies were long-haired and lazy and kind of faggy and into drugs and generally despised, but they were not violent. They were very passive. It was all peace and love, man.
Right.
And the idea of the hippie from being a lazy but peaceful Jesus Christ-like character to a homicidal maniac, that's all Manson. That's didn't exist before then.
And now that you mention it, I've seen a couple of wacky movies that suddenly, that little bit of information pulls the puzzle pieces together. They came out, sometime in the next couple of years after that, and there were a lot of movies about wandering hippies who were secretly evil and cannibals and crazy. There was one, I think it was actually called I Eat, if not very creative, I think it was just called I Eat Your Flesh, or I Drink Your Blood, or something was the name of this movie. Actually, those are two separate movies. Anyway, one of them, I think I don't know, there was just a gang of evil hippies that come into the town, and they killed some guy, and the kid gets mad and feeds him a rabid dog and a pie, which makes them turn into, zombie cannibal hippies, and it was just madness. But now that I think about it, it all feels like a propaganda film again to show us that hippies can be evil.
Exactly. Yeah. My favorite of those, and I can't even remember the name of it. I just happened to see it on The Late Show once. I don't remember anything else about it. But the premise was just so brilliant, where you had a bunch of hippies living in an old painted lady Victorian house in San Francisco, like in a commune with their guru, and the guru could levitate and do all these interesting, what you might call magic tricks.
Right.
And it takes them far too long to figure out that the reason he can do all this is because he's a vampire.
Oh, those kind of movies.
Yeah, or one of my favorite of the Hammer horror films of the was Dracula 1972 AD, where a bunch of hippies want to do an occult ritual to see what will happen, and the demon they raise is, of course, Christopher Lee as Drac.
I'm missing out on all these really. It sounds like really good movies, and I have a list now in my head that I want to look through.
Well, they should be doing a movie a day right now
just to catch up.
I watch a lot of movies these days because we all live in a COVID quarantine. I need 17 seconds for station ID, okay?
Okay.
Hey, this is Maya Wild, host of Dirt Road Less Traveled, alternate Thursday afternoons at 4, and you are listening to WIOX Roxbury, live and local in New York's Catskill Mountains at 91.3 FM, MTC Cable Channel 20, and WIOXradio.org.
Okay, so, but, there's the evil hippie thing. One of the scariest thing to me probably is not being a practicing Christian or anything religious like that. I never took the whole thing about the Antichrist and all that seriously until recently.
So your views have changed.
I don't know if let's put it this way. It seems fitting to me that if there were to be such a thing as the Antichrist, it would be like an ironic but exactly true to the story that the evangelicals of the 1970s were pushing, if it would be the most devout of Christians that would vote him into office and keep him.
Oh, that's interesting. I see what you did there.
Yeah, I don't think I was too subtle about it, but yeah, I mean, I never took the idea as seriously as I do when I see what's going on now.
Yeah, it's a bit scary.
I mean, I'm not making a political statement as much as true life facts. I don't have the exact date, but about 10 years ago, the current president of the United States was fighting with Vince McMahon in a professional wrestling match called the Millionaire versus Millionaire match at WrestleMania. We have a professional wrestling villain in the White House. I refuse to say that's normal.
Okay, devil's advocate. There were other people in the White House who were also involved in art forms, such as filmmaking, and there's other politicians, maybe not necessarily presidents, but they seem to transition from entertainment to politics sometimes.
Oh yeah, wasn't another president? Who was it? Was it Nixon? No,
Reagan was an actor.
Reagan.
As a matter of fact, Reagan was the host. When I first became aware that Ronald Reagan existed, it was because he was the host of Death Valley Days, which was a...
Yes, but Reagan never hosted The Apprentice, so... Oh, I don't know.
Don't even get me started on reality TV, so-called.
There's a new show of reality TV that's really interesting. It has like social distancing aspects to it. It's on Netflix. I can't remember the name right now, but it's a bunch of people, and they're supposed to get each other to vote each other up in the rankings of like social media platform status.
Yeah, they have like their own internal social media.
Yeah, they have their own internal social media platform, and it pretty much, they could choose to lie or they could choose to be honest. And the person who wins is the person that gets voted.
Right, they
don't see each other at all. They're in different rooms of the house, and the only thing they know about each other is whatever their profile says and whatever they communicate via their social media internal apps they have. Yeah. That's really fascinating. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but that's a very good look into what's happening right now, I think, too, with people could just portray whoever, and other people will believe it. It's a really good convincing.
And how many do?
And how many do? So, yeah.
Well, I think... I am... let's face it, Jeff has been a guest on this show more than once. We've all been affected, directly affected and negatively affected by cancel culture and by...
Yeah.
I'll make one statement on that, because it's not because I intended to originally, but because it went with what you just were saying about this reality show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that is, if we were to take the case that, again, we've already talked about this on this show for several episodes, so just tell me to shut up if it bothers you. I'm perfectly willing to talk about it. If we were to take the standards of, I don't know what you call it, evidence, the standards of how do you handle an accusation that were applied to Jeff Mack in the case of the situation that I'm talking about now, or, on the national level as it was applied to Senator Al Franken, and then you look at how the cases against both of the two presidential frontrunners, one from each party, and you see how dramatically the rules have changed.
Rules seem to shift with whoever is in charge at the time.
I swear that some of the same people, and hey, I've been all over Trump too. Now I'm saying some things about Biden. I'm not taking sides because I'm not allowed to because of the nature of this radio show, but for the station, but for the purposes of what I'm doing, I'm not really trying to anyway, because the individuals or the parties they represent isn't really the point here.
It's so hard because it's hard not to take sides because you're either forced in one direction or another. Of course.
The point I was making, though, is some of the same people that I heard especially when the Jeff thing happened, always believe the victim. When it's Joe Biden being accused, or suddenly, she's a liar. There's no evidence. Where's the evidence? And it's the exact same people.
Well, that's the same thing that happened.
And I'm getting whiplash trying to keep up. And it's like, okay, is this retroactive? If you're changing the rules now, fine. But now, what about the people that you destroyed under your previous rules? Do they get a break now?
It's the same thing with the Kavanaugh situation.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
I'm not saying what particular set of rules is how these things should be handled.
Right.
It reminds me of the late comedian George Carlin.
Yeah, George Carlin.
When he was talking about when the Roman Catholic Church dropped, with Vatican II or whatever, dropped the restriction that the Roman Catholics weren't supposed to eat meat on Friday. And then they could, because and then he's like, but how many people are still doing time in purgatory on a meat wrap? You see what I mean? It's the same. It's the same thing here. I'm getting whiplash trying to say that I want to be a good person and I want to go along with the rules. How can you do that when they change from minute to minute on the internet?
Yes, I know. It's crazy. Like this whole quarantine and the rules that you're supposed to wear a mask, you're not supposed to wear a mask. The masks are good, the masks are not good. They keep switching it around, and people are just confused. And if people who just knew who to trust and somebody was just to stick to one story and just bring it out there, then, a lot of more people would be better off.
Well, what happened there, and this is part of the whole thing that's destroying our society, in my opinion, is this should be, as far as I'm concerned, nobody that's not an MD, doctor, an epidemiologist, and a professional that deals with viruses and mass epidemics should even be talking right now.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, you need somebody who has that experience. You can just start guessing and saying, well, why don't we try this? Because some people who talk have a lot of influence, and when they discuss something on the air and they say something, a lot of people will follow your word because you're an important person, and they follow the wrong thing that you're saying, and they could get hurt.
You need to be careful.
I've already seen enough to be convinced that the idiots that are saying, we're not going to let the socialists control us and have the government tell us we got to wear masks and we got to quarantine and all that. So every time they've lifted those restrictions and tried to go back to the way things were, people start dying like flies. So maybe we shouldn't do that.
Well,
there's been enough to convince me of that already.
Well, Brent actually helped develop the online monument, which is
a cool project.
iQuarantined 2020, IQD2020.com, which is a website where if you're quarantining yourself and you want to share your story, you go there, you put your information in there, like your name, and say, hey, I'm quarantined, and just, it's somewhere where a lot of the stories could be shared in the future and could be...
You can, you just click share my story. You could tell about, I don't know, why you're quarantined.
It's to encourage people to stay in quarantine and share stories, and just because it's so important that people stay home and keep others safe. You were talking at the beginning of your show about the situation that you had at the store.
Yes.
And that's why it's so important people to understand that, it's not about you. It's about, the people who are less vulnerable than you. It's the people around you that are at risk, that you need to protect your senior citizens, the younger people, the people at risk with, that maybe have asthma and things that their bodies can't handle this as well. You know what I mean?
I am a person with asthma. I know all too well what you mean.
Yeah, so is Brent. He has asthma as well. So,
I am at the radio station, but talking on this microphone through a mask, which is not easy.
Right.
And I don't get to do my Peter Lorre impersonations and the kind of things I usually do because it's too hard to do that stuff with a mask on. But...
Right. It's, making sacrifices. But, a lot of people have stepped up. A lot of people have been donating masks, donating, their sewing services to create masks.
Yes.
And
it's beautiful. It's
so beautiful.
It's kind of beautiful when people come together. Hey, I've got masks. Hey, I need masks. Hey, I can make them. Hey, I know people that need them. Everybody gets together. It's really cool.
What I hate is that not wearing a mask has become a political statement, and it shouldn't be that way. It should not be that way.
Right.
Yeah.
We also, I don't care, we should not have heavily armed white people running around with machine guns and calling it a demonstration and waving swastikas, and we're tolerating this.
Well, at least they're not carrying tiki torches like last time.
I might say I won't take sides between the Republicans and the Democrats because of the rules of community radio, and I try to do the best I can with that one. I'm sure I have attitudes that may become... I'm sure it shows through the cracks here and there, but I'm not going to extend the slightest courtesy or acceptance to the Nazis. I'm not going to do it.
I 100% agree with you. I don't understand it either.
Oh.
But either with the right or the left side, just logic needs to be more prevalent.
That's kind of what I was going to say. This isn't really... People often think of the team is the individual, and the individual must represent the team, but all I've ever seen is tons and tons of individuals. So, I don't know about which team it's on, but, a human being cautious and not putting other human beings in danger, that seems reasonable for any team. It just seems but it seems like an individual thing. I don't think it's team or, I don't know. Just because you're in a group doesn't necessarily mean that the whole group follows that way of thinking or whatever. And, I don't know. We have lots of individuals who think about each other, but it doesn't matter what team they're on or what political group they're on or whatever, because they would also kind of respect each other.
Unfortunately, because of the way humanity is, they like to be like, you aren't belong in this group, you belong in this group. And right now, it's just, I really don't like certain opinions of a lot of different groups. So I have to look at each person as an individual because it's just driving me insane.
The two dominant political parties were never, in my lifetime, at the level of being almost warring factions that they are now.
I never remembered being so involved in politics until now. It's a lot more mainstream.
Well, I remember times when, for the most part, I could safely ignore a lot of politics that it was never like this.
It was very easy for me. It was like, you don't want equal rights, I don't need to like you. You want equal rights? Okay, we're good. It was very simple. Now it's just really complicated.
I also think there's been a super obvious disconnect. I mean, presumably at some point, you know, the person who politically represented an area was one of the people from, like, you know, one of the people in the village. And I think at one point it wasn't even the same person, but they would send somebody in to go have a meeting with the other, you know, main contacts from the different areas. But it was somebody who was part of the community.
Somebody who understood the community.
Yeah, now when you have huge communities, it's not like I don't know, it's just much different. It's not like your neighbor is going to go represent you and you trust that they're going to make good decisions. It's like people you don't know, you want to believe,
they're
not sure if you can, and it seems like they're kind of cool, but then they turn out to be a weird. It's like it's very.
And they're not in that financial.
You can connect with in your neighborhood, like.
They're also not in that economic level with you. They might be like, you know,
how can
you have somebody who's making, you know, 100 more zeros than you be like, oh, you know, we need to cut your education, you know?
But again, like if Bob the blacksmith was heading down to go chat about us, we know he's going to look out for us because he's part of our
community.
Village. Yeah. But once it becomes, but I think at that point it wasn't an occupation. It wasn't something you could be employed to do. It was you just represented your
community. Yeah.
That seems like a really cool way to go. Actually,
we don't have that anymore. There's a giant disconnect.
Let's try that. We'll just do anybody in any political position. You're not allowed to have. You can't earn money. You're not allowed. You just have to.
Yeah, that's going to fly really good.
If you're cool to your people, they will donate food to you. But otherwise, nope, you're not allowed to have a bank account. You can only do it out of the kindness of your heart.
You think we could go to a political, big political minds and just say you're no longer allowed to?
Well, anybody who really wants to help people, they'll be like, okay, cool. You know, but if they're like, no, I need my paycheck, then, yeah.
I like an idea that, this is the second time I've mentioned him tonight. He's not one of my particular heroes or anything. I just happened to mention him twice tonight. One thing that Jesse Ventura said that I did like was when he said that all the politicians should have to wear NASCAR suits with the logos of all the corporations that they take money from on...
Yes, absolutely.
Brilliant. I love that idea.
That I like.
I've never heard him say that, but I love that idea.
It's like more accountable.
Yeah. A NASCAR suit with all the company logos.
And they're like, I think we should pass this new law. And they have a big sign on their shirt that
says oil. Oh, wait a minute. I'm really into oil. Let's sell oil. Well, wait a minute. It says right there on your back that you represent this company. I love that. That's great.
How many things have you seen, because I can come up with zillions of them, that were conspiracy theories certainly in my case, when I first started reporting on them, that are now that's just commonly accepted every day?
Yeah.
Yes.
It kind of just slowly worked its way in from absolutely that's not true, nobody should believe it, and then it kind of just becomes sort of slowly accepted.
And it's really weird.
Almost like culturally, like...
Remember when those black helicopters were an X-Files conspiracy thing, and now...
Now it's a common thing,
yeah.
I just see them over my house because I live near a military base of some kind where I see military airplanes all the time because we're on a traffic pattern where they fly over all the time. I mean, it's not us personally. It's like our town is...
When you talk about a conspiracy theorist, people are just like, oh, that's that crazy person, they're insane. And that's what, it bugs me because it's like, I'm the type of person that's not like, I believe this theory 100%. No, I don't believe it 100%. This is what I know. Tell me what you know, and maybe your information would sway me with one direction or another after I do my research. That's what I believe.
But here's something,
like, for example,
too. I apologize. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, sorry about that. For example, MK Ultra.
Common knowledge.
MK Ultra was something that people were like, you're insane. That's never happened. Nobody would ever believe that. You're a crazy person for even mentioning it. And now it's like, oh, yeah, that definitely happened. There's plenty of survivors, you know. That's the thing. Let's not talk about it. It's in the past. Like, wait a minute. Time out.
I'll tell you my gauge has always been, if I can conceive of something, if I can think of something, someone else can also think of that. Even if only one, maybe I'm some kind of crazy genius and I can come up with these crazy ideas, there's got to be at least one other person who can also think that. And if there's someone else that can think it, there's people that can put it into action.
Mm-hmm. And there's people who are a little bit more twisted.
Can think of it, but also want to use it for evil.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so if you can conceive of something, someone else can too. And they probably did 1,000 years ago and have been passing that on to their generation after year.
I mean, there's been situations where it's proven that, there's been certain false flag situations that happen just to start a certain situation. And that's been proven to be things that has been done in the past and in government paperwork. But
I think we pretty much agree that was the case of the sinking of the Maine.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think history pretty much accepts that the Maine was not sunk by the Spanish. It was a deliberately created pretext so that we could have the Spanish-American War so we could acquire the territory that we acquired that way.
It just depends on the propaganda, the spread, the way it's being convinced, and the way that it's spun afterwards to make it mainstream. It's just like that, and it's going to be like that with any kind of conspiracy that's going to come out of the conspiracy stage and go into mainstream stage. It's going to be like, well, obviously that was a thing. I don't know why you'd think I would never believe that. Of course, that was completely plausible.
When I first got involved with conspiracy theory, and this was before the internet, or at least before I had any access to it. This would be in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, computers existed, but they were like the back computer with the computer tape and the punch cards.
Yeah.
And
the 70s.
70s computers were pretty primitive compared with what we got now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about, when people were still using punch cards and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But, like I said, I was COINTELPRO.
Oh, pro.
The government was doing domestic spying. There were agents infiltrating Martin Luther King's civil rights movement. There were FBI and other government agents joining every protest and underground and anti-war movement there was.
Right.
Infiltrate, disrupt, destroy from within, and so forth. And that's proven fact. That happened. But so that made a lot of people, I would say, made us paranoid, although one of our sayings at the time was just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Even, we were talking the other day about where the whole aluminum foil hat thing came from. I'm like, it's not like a conspiracy. I was talking to Brent. I was like, it's not a conspiracy what was I saying about the aluminum foil hat? Like, I was like, oh, you're not a conspiracy theorist, like a tinfoil hat person. And he's like, even that has a story behind it. I mean, it makes sense. Like,
yeah, I think these guys recognized electromagnetic signals could be used in a certain way, and they were trying to block it out, and people probably made fun of them. I'm not sure, but I do think that aluminum could block that.
well, now there's lighting in that.
Yeah, I was going to say, now they sell snow hats with a similar lining.
It finally happened. I finally have a tinfoil hat person on my show. I knew it was going to happen some night. Here we are.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, now we can get stylish snow hats with the metal.
RFID.
It'll block the electromagnetic signals. Actually, I mean, blocking electromagnetic whatever signals that might be damaging the cells in your head, that's not a terrible idea. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know if that particular hat that I saw.
I'm joking about it, of course, but
it's like you want to block cell phone signals from your brain. That's if you can't.
No, you might do it that way, but yeah.
the point that I was trying to make is that when I came into conspiracy theory, most of us were coming from the left, and now conspiracy theorist has almost become synonymous with crazy right-wing extremist.
Yeah, again, it just depends on
whoever
demonizes. Yes, that's what it is.
But it really has changed because Alex Jones.
Oh yeah.
The man really is a extreme right-wing nutbag, no question about it.
I mean, Alex Jones sits there and he's like, I have this Tiger Lily blend that's like $49.95 that'll kill every element from my cancer. It's crazy.
I didn't have any particular reason to pick it up until there was like a couple of weird, like legitimate, crappy things.
Like you could tell he was in it for the money, and it's really disturbing because, he would just incite things and not question things, just kind of say like, this is what it is. And then just make people hate each other for no reason.
I like people who kind of encourage me to think about things differently.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or David Icke.
Cool. But, yeah, I don't know. I like to poke and prod, and I'm fascinated.
Yeah, sit down with me. Have a conversation.
Exactly.
If your view differs than mine, then talk to me about it. I'd love to hear all about it. And I can sit there and tell you you're wrong, but I will listen to you.
Also, I'll tell you what, if I wanted to make sure nobody caught on to my gigantic evil scheme, I would definitely make sure I had someone with an incredibly loud voice to be crazy and talk about other crazy things, and maybe even put some of mine in there, and no one would ever believe them. You know what I mean?
As long as you sprinkle this truth and
anyone
crazy lies.
Anyone else who says, like, oh, I know this conspiracy, I have the truth, and then you're just going to always write it off. I mean, it's really, that word has become quite twisted, and I don't think that's by accident.
No, I don't think
that's by accident. I have literally said to people, not I said, but they have literally indicated that they just don't believe that people would ever get together and conspire. And I'm like, wait, let's just talk about the definition. People can get together and make a plan that they don't share with other people. And
that's the definition of conspiracy.
Not even the other day I said something. There was a leak. There was somebody leaked a bunch of passwords and hacked the WHO, Bill Gates, such and such, and I don't know what the other one was. But there's these three major things, and I totally forgot what I was saying.
You were saying that they hacked those three different things in there about the conspiracy people getting together.
Darn it. I was looking into for something else. It's kind of late for us, actually. I totally lost my string.
No, you're doing good. What I'm saying, where I think we are agreeing, for one thing, let's take a small thing. What happened to Jeff Mack? That was a conspiracy.
Yes, exactly.
I was in the room. I was in the room when some of the conspirators were doing their plotting. I saw what I saw. I heard what I heard. It wasn't a big government conspiracy like the Jack Kennedy assassination. But it was a group of people getting together and plotting what kind of lies they could tell, what kind of disinformation they could give, how could they create the specific kind of chaos they set out to create?
Yes, there's conspiracies that are, big conspiracies that you've heard of, and there's small conspiracies like that whole situation that are personal conspiracies that within the community.
With those two things leaked, I had mentioned it to a friend of mine, and I'm like, I didn't say an opinion. I said something like, this was leaked, this was leaked, this was leaked. Check out this article before they, because they were pulling all the links down. And he thought, well, if there's a big conspiracy, it wouldn't be between those three large corporations. I'm like, it was like the Bill Gates World Health Organization, and like, I can't remember what the other third.
Yeah, it's not possible because they're big corporations.
It wouldn't be. You're looking in the wrong place if you're looking for. It wouldn't be three gigantic global, behemoth corporations. Of course not. And it's just weird. I think it's like it seems sometimes like people cannot fathom anyone making a plan that would take more than one lifetime. Like they can't. If it's like they're thinking, if it's not going to make that person rich, why would they? Then why would they do this complicated plan? And it's like, well, because they have kids, because they have family, they pass it out. There's these tight little
because there's generations and generations of people.
Right,
that have
really
inspired
powerful
to be.
people don't think in terms of themselves; they think in terms of dynasties.
Yes, exactly, dynasties.
So for a person who can't themselves even conceive of such a plan, because they're thinking, I want to be rich. I need to get my bills paid. I need to and it's all very selfish. They're not thinking about, like you said, building a dynasty or that there's been generations of this ongoing plan. I don't know.
Building an empire, such as the Roman Empire, To build an empire, you have to think in terms of generations.
You have to. Yeah. I mean, when you're talking about conspiracy, you're talking about this whole bloodline thing, too, that's out there, and, that kind of a conspiracy.
Which bloodline thing? There are so many.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. People get together. People want to take care of their own people, whether it's a village, a community, or like a global network of some kind. I mean, all of that stuff seems like kind of basic human tribalism, except, expressed in these different ways.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense that people get. That's right. I mean, so to me, it's absurd to think no one would ever make plans beyond their own life. Like to think like that is a mistake. Definitely. But if I was making plans for like my, people across the generations, what I would really want to do is make sure I encourage everyone else to only think about their own life, so that they could never conceive of such a huge plan.
Well, let's take something simple like the British royal family. Fairly simple thing.
That's simple. You're right.
I personally have a fondness for the British royal family. I admit it.
Right.
I mean, I'm an Anglophile, and I have a love of, if not all things British, most things British, and
I also have a passion, and I'm also an Anglophile, so I'm right there with you.
But obviously, they have to think not just in terms of themselves as individuals, but they have to think about what's good, not just for them as individuals, but for the royal family itself.
Right.
And by extension, I believe there's a genuine, not at all phony, concern for what's best for the UK and the British Commonwealth and really the English-speaking world.
Yep.
And I think that concern is genuine.
Well, you're trying to protect your family. Of course it's genuine.
A question that just occurred to me to ask you guys is, I'm under the impression that chemtrails aren't even a conspiracy theory anymore. Too many people have seen them. They're just accepted as...
Well, that's the thing. If you make... I'm sorry, I'm having...
The last thing I heard, I think there was some kind of an official acknowledgement that they exist, and it's to do something, it has something to do with trying to slow down climate change by...
Yeah, I think that was the official thing.
The slowing down climate change, it's water vapor mixed with something. Something about encouraging crops to go in a certain direction. Like, I mean, there's a lot of different.
But once again, first it was conspiracy theory, and now it's no, we're doing that, and there's an explanation. And but the other thing I said is, like, when I first got involved with conspiracy theory, most of us were on the left, and now conspiracy theory is the province of backcrap crazy right-wing militias out in the mountains someplace. Like
I think it goes in the direction of where the big, people want that name to go. If they want it more in one direction, they'll push it towards that direction. If they want it to be more, right-wing or left-wing, more, extreme, they'll just push it wherever they want to go.
There's really no way of knowing how much of what we bother to see or encounter or think about isn't just a script. Like, there's really no way of knowing it. So perhaps, conspiracies just end up on whichever team it was decided was going to luck out that year. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
you only need to convince a certain amount of people, truly convince a certain amount of people it's one way, and then just have that spread. And then it becomes like a broken telephone of misinformation. and then people, if it goes too far in one direction, people are like, this can't be true. If it goes the other way, there's like, it's absolutely true. So,
part of me believes that our whole political system is exactly like the WWE.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the only thing that I'm not sure about, neither is anybody else, is who is Vince McMahon in this analogy.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm convinced there is one.
Yeah.
Probably somebody we will never know, I'll never see.
Yeah.
But,
and anybody who gets accused or blamed for it, that is probably not them.
Not them, yes. That's it.
Does that analogy work for you, though?
Yes,
to
100%
express...
it works. Yes, that definitely works.
I've been convinced of that my entire life, from when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
I mean, as soon as I became a professional wrestling fan, which of course I did at the appropriate age, like 4,
Right.
the appropriate age.
Yes, of course.
But I'm a lifelong fan of it. But I never doubted that it's the perfect metaphor for the way everything in our lives is arranged.
Yep. I've never seen it like that until you just mentioned it.
It's all scripted, and the only thing is we don't know who's writing the scripts.
Yep.
On the other hand, Alan Moore, who wrote The Watchmen and V for Vendetta and so many great comic and graphic novels like that, said that he personally doesn't believe there's an Illuminati-type organization that runs everything like that.
Yeah.
But he also said that even the idea of an evil conspiracy running everything is more comforting than the real horror and the real fear that it's just random chaos after all. That's the most frightening.
Well, I suspect it will follow the similar trail of the other topics we've been talking about. At first, it's just this crazy idea. And then little by little, it starts to become sort of accepted, but nobody really thinks much about it. Like, oh, yeah, the Illuminati, like ninjas and stuff, right? And then one day it'll just be, oh, yeah, here we are.
It's totally obvious.
Like, oh, yeah, we already knew. Like, you mentioned a few things today that seemed like a weaning from, oh, that's just not true, we swear, to like, oh, here we go. We're going to release, out of the kindness of our heart, we're going to release these documents now.
Yes.
Just to be cool with you.
But look at that video that was just released. So official video of UFOs gets released. Everybody's like, oh, yeah, that was some official video of the UFOs. That's great. Anyway, what's happening tomorrow? That was really fast.
Yeah, it's like, well, what's happening that you're distracting? Like, they're not releasing this.
That's the funny thing. I can't believe that.
Distracting us from something.
Except for people like us, nobody's jumping up and down.
Right.
It's like, no, the government just put out some pictures of some Delta ships that they themselves are calling unidentified flying objects,
Right.
actually asking members of the public that have an idea what these things are to come forward. Because the way it was phrased is maybe these things are alien spacecraft from another planet. Maybe there's something that a rival government like, say, China has. We don't know.
Right.
That was the way it was framed. But they admit that they don't know what it is and that they released these pictures. And can you imagine in the 1990s at the height of the popularity of the X-Files, people being as blasé and hardly noticing as they are now, something like that?
No, I don't. And that's what amazes me. And you know what the thing is, that I am in this field, I guess, whatever you want to call it. I'm really interested in conspiracies. I still have not seen that video. It's not on top of my priority list. I just didn't. I didn't have time. I mean, that would be a major thing that would be happening. Like 10 years ago, maybe that would be super interesting. You'd be like, I need to click this right now and take a look. Now it's like,
you know what?
Sure,
That was the purpose of X-Files. They weaned you into the idea. And then one day they're just going to be like, by the way, here's who actually rules the world.
Here's Bob the alien. He's come on TV to say hi.
He's going to give us a bailout for the entire planet.
Whatever it is. But, you know, I honestly expect, I'm 60 years old, and I expect the big reveal to happen during my lifetime. I really do.
You know, I also believe in the same thing. I think that if there is aliens out there, that it's going to be an announcement soon. It's going to be a very easygoing announcement. It's not going to be a big deal. It's not going to be like a press release. It's going to be like, oh, hey, you know.
And by the way, what we've been doing to the atmosphere was we were re-engineering the planet and your bodies.
You know that thing we said we never did? We actually did it.
So we could get the aliens to be more comfortable here.
You know those spaceships, you know that technology you thought we didn't have, and all the time we had technology. This is why.
By the way, the atmosphere can no longer support human life, but thank you for your sacrifice.
Thank you. That's exactly what I've been thinking.
Yeah.
It's ours now.
It's ours now. I mean, these crazy things that are like people are getting kidnapped by aliens and all this stuff aren't going to be these crazy things. They're going to be like, oh, yeah, you're right.
They really are.
It really, oops, I should have not laughed in your face. I'm so sorry about that. But it's the same thing with ghosts and things like that, too. We don't know what, like, that's another thing that I believe in. I believe in ghosts. I don't know what they are. Are they another universe colliding with our universe, and we're seeing an image of a person that looks like us? Or is it, you know, your dead, deceased loved one? Or is it an image that's been, you know, like a camera takes an image and it maybe stays a while and it's like some kind of a photograph or like traces of the past? Echoes? Who knows?
I keep coming back to what Brandon said about collapsing alternative.
Yes.
I mean, that was the plot of the DC Crisis of Infinite Earths, which, if you're a comic book fan, is one of the more... Well, CW just did their big crossover with all of the DC superheroes this year, was that storyline from the 80s, really.
Well, since you mentioned it, I definitely want to see it now, since that's what he's talking about.
And it's really fun to just kind of contemplate. I mean, like, maybe you didn't lose your keys. Maybe you just collapsed into a universe where they just weren't there anymore. You know, they never existed in the first place. Or maybe the car that you had that you don't remember having, you never had. Like, exactly.
There is, yeah, so Chelsea, another personal story of mine that will flip you out. So I called my mom, and I'm like, Mom, you remember that surgery I had on the bottom of my foot? What did they remove from the bottom of my foot? Because I need to know the surgery. I had to put it down, like, when people are like, oh, you know, how many surgeries have you had? I had to have a major surgery, and needed to put down all my surgery. So I called my mom. She's like, you never had anything on your foot. My Mom, I have a scar on my foot that says I do, and I've had a surgery there. She's like, I've never brought you to have a surgery there. So I showed her the scar. She's like, I don't know where this came from, but it wasn't from a surgery. I remember going into the doctor's office with my mom and preparing for surgery and having the surgery, and my mom has no idea what I'm talking about.
Because it's not your original mom. It's a mom from a different dimension.
It's a clone
who
mom.
has collapsed into the other one. And actually, they all exist simultaneously until you look at them, and then they collapse into one.
See?
When you turn around, there's like millions of moms.
What's really horrifying, the thing that is the most horrific to me about what Brandon is saying is how easy I find that to believe, and how much it explains things that I didn't have an explanation at all for, and now wow, that is the best explanation I've heard for some things I've experienced in my life.
It makes sense. It just makes sense.
And just a little tiny teensy backdrop of that, though, is I've often contemplated the idea that, it does just seem to make sense, but everything is happening, not in a sequence, everything is happening all at once, and everything is taking place everywhere. Like, everything and all time, it's possible that everything is actually happening all at once. And in one single spot. And that's when I started thinking about the collapsing stuff.
One thing I started thinking about a long time ago is all of this already happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like where you're going with this.
Go ahead.
No, I just said I like where you're going with this.
Oh, this already happened, yeah.
I want to hear where you go with it.
Oh, well...
Because where I'm going with it is all of this already happened, and sometimes I feel like I'm experiencing everything for the first time, but more and more and more I feel like, no, this already happened.
It's like something you're like, oh yeah, moment.
And I'm getting more and more deja vu all the time.
Okay, we just had the same exact thing. Deja vu.
So
I'm also accurately predicting the future more and more, where, like, I know what's going to happen.
Because it logically makes sense, or is it because you already know?
Okay, how about if time is cyclical instead of a straight line, and so what you're actually doing is not seeing the future, but you're just seeing into the past when it already happened before. And if time is cyclical instead of a straight line, I heard actually, I was just going to say, I can't remember who told me this theory. I learned it from the Lex. The Lex had the two factions. Some of them believed time was a straight line, and some of them believed that time was cyclical. And so they have this time prophet who would tell you the future by looking into the past. And it was really fascinating and mind-blowing. But,
we
it's
have
another
that.
way to conceive of it. If it's cyclical and looping, then yeah.
Well, farmers' almanacs are cyclical. That's where farmers look at to get their crops. They know that because something happened X amount of years ago, it's probably going to happen now in their season, so that's how they prepare for it, using a farmer's almanac.
When I was in school, we all read this Farmer's Almanac. We all grew up with it, and we were all told when we were in school not to believe it.
Yeah, well, there you go.
That it really wasn't scientific or whatever.
I don't know. A lot of mirrored things have happened that just make sense.
I think nature's filled with cycles anyway. Like I saw, the almanac seems more like I'm going to pay attention to the cycles of that. Look, I notice that the sun comes up all the time. I notice that, these things are happening in seasons, and they make notes. But I don't think it's the same as time is cyclical, in the sense that in the future, I am born in 1976 in the next loop of time. But my time in this loop of time is almost up, but I'm going to loop again at some point, but I don't know how long the finite number is of where time will then loop. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little...
You're fascinating. You're really enjoying it.
It's really late. I'm kind of half asleep. I'm getting here.
I'm really enjoying this whole cyclical conversation, actually.
Me too.
If it's cyclical, you can't really change your destiny either. You can't like change it too much because the same thing already happened once before.
Well, what if
If
you're
it's a straight
changing?
line, then you.
So what if every time you're changing something because you'll become aware of it, that's where it creates that
Spins off another
reality. Yeah.
Exactly.
Until
Yeah.
those dimensions all have to kind of like
And they collapse.
black out, and
Yeah.
they got to come back together.
That's where you lose your keys. There you go. That makes complete sense. That's where the socks go.
Now, being a
That's where you
person,
lose the socks in the drive.
as I'm a person who works with computers a lot, I have to accept things that make no sense quite a lot. Like, so I've gotten in the habit of just I take reality in such a way that if something suddenly didn't exist, I would just feel like, oh, okay, it just never existed, I guess. Because I'll be working on a program, working on something on a computer, a software design or a web design, I don't even know, like a button will just not do what it used to do, or a function won't exist anymore, and I'm like, I just have to accept it because I have no idea what happened.
And then he goes into this maniacal giggling laughter.
Yeah, it kind of puts me into a loop. Right? I've made changes to code that then I load it, and the old stuff is still there, and I'm like, okay, fine, I'll delete all the files so that way it definitely can't still be there. The pictures are gone, and it still shows the same thing that it did before. I'm like, where are you finding these pictures that don't exist on my computer anymore? It's computers are crazy. That's why that whole statement where.
Well, that's what happens here is when you have a lot of data. If we're in this another version of this, we're in this like universe that's a big computer program.
Which is a perfect analogy for it.
Yeah, and that's where you lose some data. Things happen.
I thought
Things get repeated. There's hiccups.
I felt less this way with each of the sequels, but do you remember the first time you saw The Matrix?
Yeah.
Yes.
Didn't it just make too much sense?
She hadn't seen that when I met her.
I just saw it recently.
You haven't seen this? You have to see it.
That is one of those movies where I will never be the same again after seeing that movie.
Yes, I agree 100%. And I just saw it recently, and it just split me out because I'm like, this makes too much sense. I don't like it.
Because I swear that I see the glitches now.
There's actual glitches that people have taken pictures of, including like famous people who are on television actually having what seems to be like a very obvious glitch on TV, like they're actual like computer programs. It's kind of creepy. Like I'm talking about like news announcers on like morning TV completely blocking out and having some kind of a fit that nobody mentions. It's disappeared off mainstream and it's treated like it never happened. Everything is great.
I know. Well, I've seen a couple that were a little disturbing. I don't remember where I saw this, but it was disturbing in the sense that it really did look like it almost looked like you were watching a sci-fi show where someone had been mind programmed, and it failed for a minute because they're like regular 1 second, and then all of a sudden they're like all crinkle faced and they seem confused and out of it, like they're like the little program had just shut down the battery on their mind control device.
And that happens more and more frequently.
Yes.
It's more and more noticeable.
There were several of them that were mentioned the past couple of years that were very, very obvious. And, I mean, I can't remember his name. There was he's a news announcer on Morning in New York, and I can't remember his name. I'll have to show it to you on another time. But he just completely went blank on live television, and it's recorded. It's very obvious, and it's so weird to see. But, people get stressed. He was overtired, And then this other person was also stressed.
Yeah, and I mean, that's something too. Like, I don't know what I saw. Maybe they were having a
But maybe they were stressed, yeah.
I don't know, but...
But at least they didn't turn into a lizard like the David Icke thing, right?
Oh, yeah, the whole lizard thing. And then there was a whole bunch of memes with people making lizard eyes for, actors.
I'm not the first person to discuss reptile aliens.
Yes.
There's a really interesting... I don't know what the name of the book was, but there was some kind of Russian field guide book that had descriptions of alien species and which planets they came from and when they first visited, and whether or not it was just made up or an actual leaked book. I don't know.
That was that was a very big book too. Yeah.
I can't tell the difference between science fiction and reality anymore. I really can't.
Well, science fiction is just the way of the authorities to get you ready for what is actually true.
You're hardly the first to say that. I just wish so much of it.
It's already too late.
So we're already doomed, or we're not. We're not sure.
You are a chip in a board somewhere.
I mean, think about it this way. This is what fascinates me. If you were to take 15 years ago and tell somebody, listen, so what we're going to do is I'm going to put something in your house that's going to listen to everything that you say.
But don't worry.
I'll
give you discounts on products.
Yeah, but if everything is, so it's going to listen to everything that you say all the time, including your private conversations, but it's going to be convenient, and that's not, people be like, nope, that is not coming into my house. That is horrible. And now every single person holds one. We're talking on one right now. It's a cell phone, and I'm not even talking about Alexa.
They should have, I was thinking Alexa, but I mean, it was kind of the same with cameras. One day I saw a camera up at an intersection, and I'm like, what the crap is happening? There's going to be a rebellion. People are definitely going to be knocking down the telephone pole. Nope. It's traffic cam. It helps us have knowledge of better traffic. It's no big deal. And then they started putting them at each light, at each stoplight, when I was, where I used to live. And they started putting them, every single stoplight. Wherever there's a stoplight, there's a camera. It's just for safety or something, I guess. But aside from whatever its actual purpose is, people were just like, sure, put up surveillance everywhere. We're on camera all the time.
Sounds great.
And go along with it. Again, leaned into it. Because if you had said 50 years ago, hey, guys, how about we put cameras everywhere and watch you constantly? They'd been like, no.
Do you remember the comedian Yakov Smirnoff?
No. But I might know of them.
He was from Russia, and this was during the Reagan years, during the Cold War. And he was this Russian. He was in a movie with Robin Williams called Moscow on the Hudson, I believe, something like that. But it was always, in America, we watch TV. In Soviet Union, TV watches you. Those kinds of jokes.
Oh, yeah, I know of that. I know of that entire saying, but I don't know who you're talking about. I know exactly.
Russia was a terrible place because you needed an internal passport to travel from one part of the country to other, and because everybody had to have their identity papers all the time, and because you were under constant surveillance, and we were the good guys because we didn't do that. We were the...
Yeah. Luckily here, you're allowed to freely travel.
No, we have real
without having to. No. You can't be stopped randomly. It has to be for a super good reason.
No, you can't. I'm so sorry.
I did hear that they changed the rule that...
Everything she says is true.
Yeah.
You have to have real ID to travel, certainly to get on an airplane.
Yep.
You have to... You can be stopped and arrested if you don't have your ID on you, especially in cities. It's more likely to happen if you happen to be Black, Puerto Rican, or gay.
Yeah, as far as I know, you.
Oh yeah, of course.
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be offensive. That's just literally true.
No, it's 100% true. I mean, like the situation that's going on right now with like these two. I don't know. I'm trying to be nice, but it's hard to be nice with these two idiots that pretty much decided to murder a human being because he looked suspicious. They took, this person's life in their own hands because he was just jogging and he looked suspicious, so let's just shoot him. That's what's happening right now.
And by suspicious, we mean he was black.
Yes.
Exactly.
I mean, he showed me a Facebook post. A white gentleman, decided to walk down the street with a television just to prove that looking suspicious was not really a thing, and it was definitely a race issue. Because he took the TV and was just running down the street with it, looking suspicious, and nobody shot him.
So, I hate to say this, but we have literally run out of time. It's the end of the show.
Oh, wow.
But before you go, I want you to do two things. One is tell everybody that doesn't already know how they can see old or new if you're making new ones, can see Mystcon because it's wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Sure.
You can find us on YouTube. Just do hashtag Mystcon, Mystcon, and you'll find our entire channel and all our videos under there. Or you could search Historical Conspiracies. Also on Twitter, under at Cardia Love, I share our Mystcon episodes. And on top of that, one thing that I did want to mention as well is bizbin.com. We created a community for small business owners and just everyday people that just were getting kind of harassed with a lot of fees for selling just small things to survive. So Brent created a community, a marketplace that people could just sell their stuff and keep 100% of what they earn. They could open a store, everything. So through this time, it's a great opportunity to sell your stuff.
I gave there's a lot of cool tools for any seller, so definitely worth it. And everything is free.
You could open our own website for free. So.
And for like crafters, like people make stuff. Like I want to get, you want to make a
people in the fair community that are out right now.
U.S. Right now, probably, or maybe probably, I don't know.
It's all going to be. It is right now. We beta tested it for over a year. Yeah. So it's bizbin.com, BIZZBIN.com, and.
So thanks a lot for having
us. Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, thank you. I, of course, am going to want you back on this show because this has been, it's been interesting. It's been a lot of fun. It's also, I enjoy talking with both of you, of course, and listening to both of you.
You made it easy. We really appreciate it because we're both really nervous.
We always do. I mean, I hang out with my friends on the radio. That's what I do, pretty much.
That's what it felt like, so thank you.
Excellent. And so let's do this again. And my closing words are, and I'd like to, invite you to say whatever you want to. I believe that when we find out the truth, and I believe we will, we're going to find that it's crazier than the craziest conspiracy theories any of us ever dreamed of. We weren't crazy enough.
I agree. I don't believe that one person could possibly conceive everything that's happening right now.
And I have closing words, too. My closing words, guys, if you can help somebody, help them. And if you can't help them, at least don't harm them. And that is all. That was my closing statement.
Excellent. So I'll let you guys go for now, but let's do this again.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having us, Chelsea. We really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Be safe.